Citizens of the universe, it is time for episode 25 of the Neutral Lens podcast, quarter of a century, kind of. I'm thinking I might take a little break after this, and then we'll come back in maybe a few weeks, a couple months. Not sure yet. Just give me some time to gather some more ideas and stuff. But yeah, let's get into this week's topics. And as always, if you guys have any questions or topics you want to submit, hit me up at Neutral Lens Pod on all socials, and I'll get to in a future episode. Topic number 1. So we have a person who is in their sophomore year of high school. He has parents going through a divorce. They have gone through a lot of arguing. It's a very tense home environment, and is asking how to handle it. So this is not a lot to go on, but honestly, most divorce situations where it's not some sort of like clear abuse or like crazy violence going on, I think that it is really important to, I don't know, because like I would say lean on your friends, but it's hard because it's a personal situation that you kind of shouldn't push on others, to be honest. Nor should you just tell them because they should be freely allowed to know. You know, if you want to share, that's okay, but it's a deeply, deeply personal thing to be going through. And I'm not sure that your friends should be dragged into this or really be nosy and a part of this. You know what I mean? So it's hard, but like you need to find some sort of way to distract yourself and not, because I think you are a major factor. You're very, very important in this, right? Because you act as sort of the middle ground for your parents, assuming both parents love you and neither is like clearly abusive or clearly in the wrong. So you have a lot of influence because, you know, I think they'll both look to you as sort of a third party, and I think it's important to stay neutral and sort of like use yourself as a way to diffuse tension and diffuse arguments, because I think it'll be difficult for them to stay mad at each other if it's clearly upsetting you. But like even if you do have a side, I think it's important that you don't show your hand, because if you want to help one of them, then being open about it would just make yourself clearly like supportive and force the other parent on the defensive, and that could actually make the situation worse. So you have to present yourself as sort of an outlet for both of them to an extent, and it's really difficult because like it's super super exhausting. Like, you know, you can try and request, hey, can we not do this in front of me? You know, it probably won't work. But you really just like have to find something that you can put your passion into, like sports or maybe just academics, and try and keep your focus elsewhere, because ultimately these are adult things that you don't really have control over, nor do you really understand. Like who's getting the house, who's moving out, are you both moving? Who gets what property? Like, was there a good prenup or was there not? How do we split all this? Do we have joint bank accounts that we have to like now deal with who gets what? So, and like lawyers get involved. Maybe you go to court. You go to court. It's like it can be really tough. But I think I think it will be important that ultimately you be there for both parents, because it's an incredibly tough time for them too. And to be there to support them and hope that they will support you. And if you really need someone, like you can go to a school counselor, you can turn to some friends and maybe let them in a little bit just so they know what's going on. So you have maybe somewhere to go, hey, I need to like crash at your house for a couple hours, or something like that. Like, hey, I need to get away with this, or away from this. But yeah, like ultimately this isn't your fight, right? Obviously you're a huge part of it, but this is a fight between them. And I think it's important not to let that influence you and think that your parents are like, you know, terrible people, unless again there's one side that's clearly wrong, like a cheating situation or a violent situation or something like that. In which case, like you kind of need to be there to be protective, or you need to just call the police, you know. And maybe they do just have to fight in court, and it's gonna be rough. Like you just have to accept that, and it's gonna be really difficult. But just know that, you know, at some point it's going to pass, and you just have to accept that and deal with it and understand that this isn't a forever thing. You know, it's going to pass at some points, and you just want to be there for them and hope that they'll be there for you, and that's really the best you can do, because it's exhausting for everyone involved, and it really sucks. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to say, because it's something that you can't really prepare for, something that you can't really educate someone on how to go through. You just, you know, hardships are hardships, and they're hard for a reason. So yeah, I wish you all the best, because it is a rough situation to be in. I know people who've been in that situation. I myself have been in similar situations, and you just it really becomes like a needing to find a distraction, and using that to sort of divert your attention when it gets tough and you can't think about it anymore, because it will get overwhelming at times. It will. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. So I do want to talk about why I think like work experience in a lot of different industries really doesn't mean much, and why I think like people aren't really hiring the right way. Like, for example, science, or maybe some like software engineering, some things like that, where your experience really compounds. Or for like super senior positions, then yeah, it makes sense to hire based on experience, and that's totally fair, you know. And but there's a lot of places, especially in the more creative environments or like technical environments, where I think hiring someone who's been in the industry for like many years, like 20 years, for example, is not a good idea, because if someone's been in the industry for a long time, they're not having some like super successful position, then maybe there's a reason they haven't gotten there. You know, obviously there's a chance they just got held back, but maybe they got held back for personality reasons. You never know. So, but I think when you look for experience, when people see experience, I think they're really looking at a floor, not a ceiling. And when I look at youth and I look at potential, I'm looking at like the ceiling, the potential that someone has. Because I think someone who's been in the industry for a long time, and you know, you know the skills they're going to bring, and you know how good they're going to be at the absolute worst. But I feel like the upside isn't as high, because if it was higher, they wouldn't need to be doing this. You know what I mean? Unless there's like a really good reason in the interview, like, hey, the bosses were so-and-so, so I left because of disputes. Then that's a different story, right? But like, I just feel like people overvalue experience, saying, oh, this guy has 20 years of experience, 15 years of experience. They should be super solid on everything if it's been 20 years versus someone fresh out of college. But if you get someone, you interview someone and they're fresh out of college and they have like solid fundamentals, and they show this intelligence and willingness to learn and to change and adapt based on what you're doing and saying, more than anything else, that sort of potential and that intelligence and that willingness to learn means more than their actual skill. Like, they could be honestly clueless, and they could surpass most people in your company within 6 months to a year. You know, and compound that fact with the fact that older people are a lot more set in their ways. You know, and they've also somewhat shown their potential through how long they've been doing this and their accomplishments. So if they come in, they've been doing this for 20 years and they barely have any notable accomplishments. What are we doing here? You know? Like, if someone is a 25-year veteran and they have this like mid-tier job, right? They're probably not very good. But yeah, like I've seen so many like people hire based on experience, and I just think that when they hire, they don't really know what they're looking for, and they don't know how to find it. Because it's hard for people to measure intelligence, and it's hard for non-intelligent people to measure intelligence. You know what I mean? And I think it's just, I value that sort of willingness to learn and intelligence more than anything. Because if you're willing to learn and you're smart, you can put things together and you can improve at a very, very fast pace. So if they're willing to commit their time and energy to something, then it's likely they can surpass a lot of people within just a year or so. You know, especially in a creative environment. I think places where this doesn't really apply are places where you really need a ton of knowledge, like in a science lab. You know, I don't think anyone's becoming a top tier scientist unless they're like 50 years old and they've gone through so much and they've seen so much. Unless they're an absolute Einstein level genius, that is just not going to happen. But there's a lot of places, like in business or in marketing or in music or in film or in broadcasts, like, you know, technical things, creative things. To me, it's all about the brain and how intelligent someone is and how willing they are to learn rather than the experience, because experience teaches you how to handle scenarios because you've already lived it. Intelligence is their ability to handle scenarios they haven't seen before. So if someone's really intelligent and they start gaining experience within just a couple of years, they're going to be brilliant. So I think that's so important compared to experience. I mean, obviously experience is valuable. It is. It really matters. But you can't say that experience is everything, because it's not. You know, even when you see in like competitions how new kids can come up and beat all the older experienced players, because that talent, that ability, that potential is there. The experience helps you be more consistent. Again, experience is floor. Youth and potential and intelligence is ceiling. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for someone who you know can't be worse than this? Or are you looking for someone who can really elevate to the next level? What is the purpose of that hire? That's what determines, do you value experience more or youth more? So, or at least that's just my opinion. All right. Last thing I do want to talk about is, where does maturity come from? Because I feel like I've seen a lot of people, they sort of are like immature, or they don't really know why some people are very immature, why some people are immature. And I think one obvious avenue is like the best way to get perspective is to go through tough times in life. And I think maturity is really just your ability to have a deeper perspective. And a good way to develop that is honestly trauma, which is like not a good thing. You know, you don't want, like, if everyone knows this, if you see a 12-year-old who is super wise, that 12-year-old's been through some stuff, and that's not a good thing. They're not happy, you know. But like growing up in poverty, growing up in a crime-ridden area, traumatic events happening, you know, assault or death or, you know, bullying, harassment, things like that. They give you a different perspective from the one that you're used to, or the one that you've been with. You know, they kind of open up your eyes to a different way to see the world, a different way to experience the world than the one that you've gone through. Which is also like why you see rich kids, they're very spoiled, they're very immature. How do they get spoiled? It's because they don't have another perspective. They think, I always get what I want, you know, and I do what I want to do. So when that gets denied, they don't have the perspective and they don't have the experience to understand that's part of life. Versus a kid who's often been denied that sort of thing, or maybe has gone through some tough times, poverty, abuse, whatever it is. They have that experience and they have the perspective to understand what that's like, and also maybe hopefully they're in a better place. So they're more appreciative of what they have. And that sort of deeper understanding, that sort of deeper perspective, to me, is what really causes a growth and maturity. You know? But I would say, like, honestly, don't use this as a means to belittle someone. Like, if someone is spoiled or someone is immature, I mean, it could just be because they refuse to, like, it could be an ego thing, right? They refuse to accept that things can be different from what they think. But a lot of them, honestly, they just haven't been through enough, and it's not a bad thing to not have gone through stuff in life. But like those kinds of people who kind of like speak out when they don't have the sort of perspective, you can tell, and they don't know that their word doesn't mean much because they don't have that sort of perspective to understand that people won't listen. But like I would say, don't use someone's maturity as means say, oh, like this person's smart or dumb. It's just maturity is really a measure of perspective, and some people can develop it just through natural talent, I guess. Some people really can't. Some people have to go through some things, and some people, like that's why a lot of older people, because they've been through a lot, they've seen a lot of things, so they'll understand more than the younger kids. And the younger kids are often like very surface level. I want to do this, I do this. Every kid is like that, and it's because they don't have perspective. And as they go through life, you develop more perspective. And some are naturally just going to develop it faster than others, and some will have been through more things, more hardships than others. And so they'll be able to develop that maturity and that perspective much more quickly than some other people. So I think we're all just in different stages in life of experience that, but also learning from it and allowing it to change views, right? Because like sometimes people just don't allow anything to change their views, and if you're stubborn enough with that, then you're not really going to gain more perspective. You're not really going to gain maturity. But that's just how people are, And eventually, everyone does gain new perspectives, and eventually everyone does mature. Just takes some people longer than others. So, yeah, I think that will do it for now. And again, not sure when I will recontinue, but I hope to see you all soon. Thank you for listening.